Hello, this is Joe Pryor with the virtualrealestateteam.com in Oklahoma City, and this is video number 2 for first-time homebuyers. On video 1, what I did is I took you from our initial meeting where we looked at your income documents, and then went to a lender, got ourselves pre-approved or pre-qualified actually. Then the next step was to define what house you want, go out and see those houses, start going through a process of elimination, and finding that house that met your needs. And now we have a contract acceptance. So what's the rest of the process? Well, it first of all starts with me getting the signed copies. Never verbal. Remember that a verbal acceptance in Oklahoma and most places is not a contract. So once I get the signed documents back, then I know we have a contract. And I'm going to send that contract to your lender, and I'm going to give you a copy of your contract. We're going to go over the details. And then what the lender is going to do is start their process into motion. They're going to order an appraisal. But before we get to that, I want to talk about something that we're going to need to do even before then. There are 3 contingencies, big contingencies in these contracts. Number 1 is that you're approved for a mortgage. That's very, very important. Number 2, that the house appraises, because if it doesn't appraise for our purchase price, the lender's not going to want you to get a loan, and they're going to require the seller to reduce the price. But the first contingency is based on that condition of property. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get you 2 different kinds of inspectors. The first inspector is what we call a pest inspection. They're going to see if those little buggers we call termites, or maybe some type of ants like fire ants, that can eat away at a foundation or eat away at the fiber or wood or whatever, are existing in that home, because that's going to be a requirement of typically of the lender, is that it's free of pest. And so we're going to get that certified for you. And if it does need treatment, we're going to get treatment. Now if there's damage, which normally we're going to see, but it's always possible that we don't because it's behind walls, we may want to cancel the contract. And then if that's okay, we also have a house inspector. Now house inspectors in Oklahoma are licensed. They have to be trained to a certain extent. They have to pass tests. They have to be certified with the state. Now these people are not licensed in everything that they do. Maybe they were a sheetrocker. Maybe they're actually a licensed plumber or electrician, but they're not a structural engineer. They're not a roofer. But maybe they understand every aspect of the inspection process, because that's what we're going to do. The roof, the foundation, the plumbing, the electrical, the mechanical, the drainage, all of those things are going to be inspected. Now cosmetics, no. We're not going to say, well, there's a scratch on the wall, it needs to be repainted. These are things that are fundamental to the house. So let's say we have $1,000 worth of repairs, and let's say that they come up with $800. Well, we've met the contingency of the contract. Now the seller's going to be responsible for those repairs, but that's one contingency met. Now, if there is over $1,000, and I'm using that figure because it's going to vary on the size, the price, the condition of the home, then if it's $2,000, let's say, then the contract is essentially null and void at that point. In other words, if you want to walk away, you can. Now in most cases, unless we have a big problem, what we do is we negotiate those repairs. Maybe you say, hey, I got a smoking deal on this house, so I'll go with $1,000 worth of repairs, and I'll accept it at that. Or maybe it's where we say, you know, Mr. Seller, I'll continue on with this contract, but I'm going to need all $2,000 done. Now normally it's an overestimate. I'll get into that in another video, because normally that $2,000 can be done usually for $1,600. Inspectors typically overestimate just a little bit. Not always, but a little bit. And we want to get those licensed people in to give us the actual repair bids at some point. So let's say now we've gotten to that point. We've agreed on the terms based on inspection. What's next? Well, what's next is the appraisal. Now this is very important because, you know, the appraiser is a misunderstood person. Now, a lot of things have changed since we've had a mortgage meltdown in the United States. But right now, it's very important in our rules that an appraiser has an arm's length relationship with all of us. A lender can't handpick the appraiser. I can't handpick the appraiser. It's done out of a pool. And so that particular person is there, not necessarily to give you the ultimate value, but at least to justify the loan that the mortgage company is giving. So in a way they work for you, of course, but they're really working for the mortgage company to say, hey, this house has the value that the contract says it is. Now some appraisers, FHA and VA in particular, can set requirements that have to be done previous to closing. And so even in conventional sometimes, I'm seeing right now everybody's scrutinizing all the deals, and there can be requirements also that the appraiser can set. So now we've been through the appraisal, and let's say that $140,000 house that we have under contract appraises for that amount. The question is, now what's next? We've finished the first contingency. We finished the second contingency. Now we're getting ready to go to close. But before we do that, the underwriter, which is the last person in the chain at the mortgage company, has to go over all the documents, make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, all the material is in, there are no red flags, they have a copy of the appraisal, they know what appraises. That is your final approval, and you do not have final approval until there's a contract, inspections, appraisal, everything is done. Now we know that we can close. The next thing that happens is we make sure that repairs are done, and we make sure they're done by licensed people. Now, if the homeowner is a plumber, sure, he can do a plumbing inspection, but he can't do electrical if an electrician is required. The reason why we want licensed people or professional people doing this is I want you to have recourse. They typically will give a warranty on their work. So 2 weeks later, if something they did doesn't work, you have somebody that's a licensed and bonded person you can fall back on. They come out and they fix it again if that's necessary. So now we've gotten the repairs done. What's next? What you and I do is we go back for a final walkthrough, a final inspection. And you may want your inspector that inspected the house to come with you to check things out. And typically that's done a day before or the morning of a closing. We want to make sure the house is in its as-is condition, that repairs are done. Now we're going to closing. Now previous to that, I've gotten a closing statement, and that's worth a whole nother video, that is from the title company that says this is where all the money is flowing back and forth. We're paying off the repair people. We're making sure that there's clear title. They've given you a figure that you need to bring. Say it's $7,500. You're bringing a cashier's check. Both you and the sellers are there. We go through a long signing period. We wait for the money to come in from the lender because what we have to do is tell them, yes, everything is signed. The lender brings their money in, and in Oklahoma, at that moment, you own that house. Now, the other thing that I want to handle in another video is possession. Possession is something that is one of the most difficult things we deal with in real estate. Because if you're a first-time buyer, you're typically buying a house where somebody is becoming a second-time buyer. And then that seller is becoming a third-time buyer. And so we have a chain of events that have to go on. They have to close that house with you before they can close the next house, and they can't move in until they close your house. So I'll go through possession and what's different about that than closing. But here's the important thing. We've met all contingencies. We hopefully have got you a great value. In a way, my job is done from a legal and ethical point of view. According to the Real Estate Commission, you're moving your furniture in, but my job is never done for you. If you ever need a problem solved, if you never need help on someone that is a supplier of something or a repair of something, any questions that you may have, I want you to know that I'm there. So hopefully, as a first-time home buyer, you have the joy of home owning. You move into something that's yours. You move into something that gives you a tax deduction. You're extremely happy, and we all live happily ever after at that point. So that's my second part. That takes us through the whole first meeting to the closing table, to you moving your furniture in, to you living happily ever after. Now what I'm going to do is the important stuff, which give you some more education and fill in the blanks. This is Joe Pryor with the Virtual Real Estate Team, where we deliver traditional real estate values with the speed of technology.